The Monster Hunter series, especially the older generations, has a very unique theme and design philosophy associated to it. People that are at the very least aware of this franchise can rather easily identify it through still images or short clips, and that is due to their artistic style not being just iconic, but also very well established. And to achieve that beautiful cohesion we see in the final products, a lot of work is done behind the scenes. Throughout their development, Capcom conceptualizes a surprisingly high amount of assets: monsters, armor, weapons, locales, and other miscellaneous elements. So many of these are created, in fact, that they make entire books solely dedicated to the hundreds and hundreds of concept art that originate from their game's production. Most of that work does end up seeing the light of day though, either on the game they are made for or in future ones. Monster Hunter devs really don't like wasting the potential of their designs, especially when it comes to the monsters themselves. In these books we can find dozens, many dozens of sketches or even detailed illustrations of creatures. Some we can easily recognize, others are strangely similar to existing in-game bosses, and some of them do not resemble anything we have seen yet. As a massive fan of the series, seeing these art pieces is absolutely eye candy to me. Not just because the art itself is beautiful, but we can also see how the creatures we now hunt developed over time. Take Celtas for example. The core idea for this creature was always to be a combination of two separate living beings into a singular entity, but their initial concept was surprisingly different than the end product, both in aesthetics and biology. Their anatomy, especially male Celtas, was drastically divergent from what we got in 4 Ultimate. Instead of a vibrant chromatic green beetle flying insect, the male was a dark grey, heavily armored elongated exopod, similar in mass and size to the female, which was smaller and had a much lighter build than how it is currently. In this concept, the male not only serves as body armor for his mate, it also has a much more active combat role, since it's him, not her, that has the tail pincers, a signature weapon of this monster. Unlike its final form, the Celta's dynamic in terms of behavior was also a lot more different. Despite being semi-connected to each other, they still worked independently, combining their functionalities to complement each other's weaknesses and limitations, or at least that's what the illustration implied. The art gives a sense of mutual teamwork, something that was eventually changed into males acting and being treated more like a tool than anything else. Later on, the female Celtas became bulkier and acquired the aforementioned tail, with the male still having a significant combat role and functional independence, with its main weapon now being the mantis-like frontal limbs. Eventually the idea would be refined even further through multiple iterations until finally reaching their current iconic design. This process can be seen several times throughout the numerous books available, with some having a much shorter and direct development. But others, however, are still nothing more than a drawing. Like I said in the beginning, Capcom doesn't really like throwing ideas away in the slightest. They may not come to fruition on that specific game or generation, but they will always save it for later use. And eventually, these stored designs do become fully realized, even if it takes decades for that to happen. Wilds is going to be the most ambitious project the franchise ever had. That much we know. The overall scale of the game is drastically larger than any other Monster Hunter title, and their ecosystems will be grander and more detailed than ever. Or at least, that's what the developers advertise. So, assuming that that's true, instead of trying to guess which already existing monsters are going to be in the game, something that I did twice somehow, why don't we speculate which concepts can be the upcoming new monsters and how could they work in Wilds? While it's very easy to just pick some cool concepts and call it a day, I believe it is a lot more interesting to explore Capcom's archived ideas and try to integrate them into the first 6th generation title, because that game in particular has the potential of introducing wildlife in a way that we never experienced in the series until now, and that includes both new mechanics and even brand new quest types. During my selection, I had a few parameters that not only fit the premise wilds allegedly possess, but also that, in my opinion, matches the current community's expectations. First and foremost, these monsters must fill an empty niche of some kind, being anatomy, structure, combat style, gimmick, behavior, anything. They need to be unique in some way, shape or form. And second, they have to contribute to a breathing, believable and immersive ecosystem. The lead producer himself stated that gameplay component will be expanded and more complex this time around, having a much more detailed and active role in Wild's gameplay. With that in mind, the creatures I'm choosing need to not just be part of said ecosystem, but also have a significant role in it, being predation, symbiosis, pollination, pest control, etc. To keep things short, well, shorter, I decided to showcase in a more detailed manner only 3 concepts, but by the end of the video I will display a few more just for you guys to see what crazy ideas Capcom has been cooking over the years. We begin with a somewhat popular pick since this one has been shown around quite a few times already. The Fortress Dragon. The idea behind it is ironically similar to Zynoger's, albeit in a much more extreme scale. This turtle of titanic proportions coexists with another species, the desert goblin in this case. Despite its massive size, the dragon's shell is surprisingly fragile. However, throughout their evolution, these large elder dragon developed a connection with these tribalistic Sampian creatures. As they construct their fortress-like village on the monster's back, its once vulnerable shell is now protected. In turn, the sheer mass of the turtle repels most predators that could otherwise be dangerous to the goblins. This very exotic symbiotic relationship was never implemented in any Monster Hunter title, but Wild has the potential and even resources to pull this one out. Just imagine having a literal siege against this massive creature, first having to weaken it enough to tumble while under fire, then climb it, invade the castle, defeat the goblins, fighting the turtle's weak spot, or just blowing everything up with large bombs and kill it. It would be like a fusion of Zora Magdaros, Nakarkos, and Shakalaka King all fused together. This could be an amazingly unique siege that incorporates an idea of extreme symbiosis, including one with Sampian creatures no less. Obviously, this exact illustration doesn't represent what we could see in-game, even if the devs picked up this specific idea. The Monster Hunter universe doesn't even have goblins, so it would probably be Milixes, Shakalakas or something similar. Actually, Shakalakas would fit very well, not gonna lie. And same thing with the turtle. Its design would most likely be drastically different from what we see here, but the concept behind it is what's important. If they added a siege monster of this nature in Wilds, it would be a massive breath of fresh air when it comes to that category of quests, and would certainly make that siege substantially more enjoyable and memorable. Next up, we have an unused sketch of a monster that resembles a very old boss in the series. The gas dragon was an initial illustration that eventually would become the famous Yama Tsukami. But I still think Capcom could use this in another way. And for that, I would like to talk about Basarius and Gravius. These two, despite being classified as separate monsters, are actually the exact same species, just in different life stages, possessing a similar kit but with the right amount of variation to feel unique enough. This allows developers to showcase the drastic changes of some of these creatures go through throughout their lifespan, which enhances immersion from the player's perspective, and doing so in a way that is actually beneficial for the game by making them aesthetically and mechanically different rather than being a copy of each other with a different model. I believe that by adding this monster as a baby Yama would be a great opportunity to change how the game introduces elder dragons in the player's progression. Usually, Monster Hunter utilizes either low tier monsters of that type like Kirin and... well, actually it's usually just Kirin, or the title's flagship if they so happen to belong to that category. If, instead, the hunter's first interaction with an Elder Dragon was a literal baby of one, it would teach players the exclusive traits of that monster class, like the dragon element, being unable to capture it and all that jazz, within a quote-unquote safe environment, since it's a hatchling that we are talking about after all. Though this one is a bit of a stretch, since for this to really work, Yama itself would have to be in the game to keep cohesion, and while I do know that a lot of people want to see it return, to make the monster justice, Capcom would really need to pull an Amatsu and redesign the entire hunt cause, let's be honest, its original fight is a bit lackluster to say the least. And that would be a lot of work that I personally doubt it would even happen in Wilds. Maybe on the expansion, but that's so far off that it's impossible to predict anything at this moment. Now, for the last example, I found out an illustration that would defy the entire monster structure we have for the past 20 years, but it would be extremely cool to see, especially in Wilds due to its immersive ecosystems and potential open world nature. So even though this one is leaning a bit to the crazy side, I ultimately decided to go through with it. Drums please. Gentlemen, I present to you ants. No, seriously, let me cook. Insects are nothing new in the series. We had many of those in the past, and we even had ant-like monsters as endemic life in previous titles. But we never engaged with a fully fledged colony. Monster Hunter works almost exclusively on one-on-one interactions. We mostly hunt one monster at a time, 2 or 3 at most in very rare occasions. The most numerous enemies we fight at once are small monster packs like Jagrasses, Velocirums, Gendrums, all drums basically. And even then, the volume of those creatures doesn't surpass 10 individuals. Having a hunt that includes dozens if not hundreds of small monsters would deliver a very unique experience that could increase the quest diversity further, not to mention that it would be immensely cool just to wipe the floor with an entire army of bugs. But how could Capcom do that to begin with? That's the real question. The first obstacle this idea imposes is obviously performance. Having so many entities around you consuming computer power, it's not surprising if that would easily affect the entire game's performance. And to be fair, that is expected. But fortunately for us, that issue is actually already solved in Wilds, and Capcom shown us that. Remember that the trailer highlighted a drastic increase in endemic life density, something later confirmed by the game's lead producer. But do you know just how much of an increase it really is? Try to guess how many animals are on this clip. Too late, 107. Yes, I counted it. 107 animals. And this is just a rather small piece of land. If the game is actually open world, just imagine how many more can the engine handle within the hunter's vicinity. And even if it isn't, the amount of endemic lifeforms present every single hunt is enormous. This shows that Wilds can handle a pretty large sum of monsters in a small area, so the technical limitation is already fixed. Next, we need to find out how exactly a quest like this would realistically work without changing the game too much. This is what I came up with. Just like most hunts in the series, our main objective would be to defeat or capture the queen. So far, nothing out of the ordinary. You go to the nest, reach the target, kill it, quest complete. Simple. Here's the interesting part though. When I saw these concepts, it was clear to me that this species was a lot more complex in terms of its hierarchical structure than other ants that are already in game, namely the Alteroths. The numerous casts of the colony not only show a lot more specialization than the aforementioned equivalent, but it is also evident that these particular ants are predators, since 4 out of the 5 types are specialized for combat. So, when I saw this, I thought, what if we have the same hunt format as any drone monster, but this time we reversed it, where the main target is the weakest element and the struggle comes instead from its smaller subordinates. What if the hard part of the quest was fighting through hordes of ants, with each cast having unique mechanics, strengths and weaknesses, to then get to the queen? The world of Monster Hunter is filled to the brim with titanic ruins of monuments built eons past. Just imagine you being tasked by the guild to take down an entire ant colony located inside an ancient temple deep in the desert. You find the nest, enter, and fight waves upon waves of warriors of several kinds. You search from chamber to chamber looking for your main goal. The deeper you go, the tougher and more numerous the colony is. After defeating a never-ending swarm of bugs, you finally reach the royal chamber, and inside it, the queen. But to reach her, you must first kill its royal guard. 3 giant ants with the combined power of a low-tier monster. Your last challenge before accomplishing your objective. I know that my examples, especially the first and third, are beyond the scope of what we usually see in the series. But if there's a chance of anything of the sort to happen, it's in Wilds. If Capcom truly went all out with this game and is making it as ambitious and expensive as they stated during its development, there is a possibility, though small, of seeing something of this magnitude being implemented in the upcoming title. Of course, that changes like these don't need to happen for us to like Wilds. We all know that even if the 6th generation was World again but with better graphics and different roster, nobody would complain about it. But having new monsters, especially ones that bring new ideas and mechanics to the table, is always a very pleasant addition, which, without a doubt, will happen on this one. Just perhaps not to the same extent as the examples I showed. Speaking of which, as I promised, here's a bunch of unreleased content that hopefully do end up seeing the light of day. Capcom creates by far the best creature design I've ever seen, so I'm sure that when they do in fact use these archived ideas, they will come out absolutely magnificent. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with the examples presented? Which concept would you like to see in the future? Let me know in the comments below. A huge thank you to my Patreon supporters for supporting the channel and the content I create. If you wanna join the ranks, you can do so for only $1 a month. The link will be in the description. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions down below, join our Discord server, engage with the community, and I hope to see you all next time.